What is the true cost of pride when it prevents us from seeking help? This question is more than just a philosophical musing. It's a crucial examination of the human condition. Let's dive into the concept of pride. Pride, by definition, is a feeling of deep pleasure derived from one's own achievements. The achievements of those one is closely associated with, or from qualities or possessions that are widely admired. It's a sense of self-respect and personal worth, and it's a vital part of our identity. The origins of pride are deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. It's a universal human experience, a basic emotion that has helped our ancestors survive and thrive by promoting social cohesion and personal accomplishment. But like most things in life, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, pride can push us to achieve, to strive, to overcome. It can be the fuel that drives us to conquer our fears, to reach our goals, to stand tall even in the face of adversity. But on the other hand, when taken to an extreme, pride can become a barrier. It can prevent us from accepting our limitations and acknowledging our need for help. Societal expectations often exacerbate this issue, especially for men. There's a pervasive belief in many cultures that men should be self-reliant and independent, that asking for help is a sign of weakness. This can lead to an avoidance of seeking assistance, even when it's clearly needed. The cost of such pride can be immense, leading to unnecessary struggles, missed opportunities, and even physical and mental health issues. Pride, in its most destructive form, can lead to isolation, to a sense of being trapped within the walls of our own ego. It can blind us to the fact that we are, in essence, social creatures, wired for connection and cooperation. So where does this leave us? It's important to recognize that it's okay to ask for help, that it's not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. It's a recognition of our common humanity, of our shared struggles and triumphs. Pride, while often seen as a sign of strength, can also be a weakness when it stops us from seeking the assistance we need. Consider the case of John Doe, a successful businessman who was too proud to ask for help. John had it all. He was the go-to guy in his field, his business was thriving, and he seemed to have the Midas touch. But beneath this veneer of success, there was a different story brewing. John was struggling. His business was facing some financial difficulties unknown to the outside world. The market was shifting, his competitors were catching up, and his profits were dwindling. But John, well, he was too proud to admit that he needed help. His pride told him that he could handle it all, that asking for help was a sign of weakness, that he, John Doe, the successful businessman, couldn't possibly need assistance. His pride became his shield, blocking out anyone who might offer aid. It was his suit of armor, protecting his ego but isolating him from potential sources of support. But the thing about armor is, it's heavy, it weighs you down. And John was sinking. His business started to falter, his debts began to pile up, and his once thriving empire was on the brink of collapse. Yet, even in the face of imminent failure, John's pride held him back. It kept him from reaching out, from admitting that he was in over his head, from seeking the help he desperately needed. In the end, John's business fell apart, his empire crumbled, and all because he was too proud to ask for help. His story is a stark reminder of how pride can be our downfall. It shows us how our fear of appearing weak, of admitting that we don't have all the answers, can lead us down a path of destruction. John's story illustrates how pride can blind us to the resources and support available around us. It's a sobering tale of how our own pride can become our greatest enemy, leading us to ignore the help that's right in front of us, and ultimately causing our downfall. Now let's shift our attention to Richard Rowe, a man who chose to seek help despite his pride. Richard was a self-made man. He had built his business from the ground up, putting in countless hours and sacrificing much to achieve his dream. For years, his business thrived, and Richard reveled in his success, proud of what he had accomplished. But then, the tide turned. The market shifted, competition grew fierce, and Richard's business began to flounder. He watched as his once thriving enterprise started to lose its footing. Richard was a proud man, and his initial reaction was to buckle down and face the challenge head-on. After all, he had built his business alone, and he felt he could save it alone. However, as the situation worsened, Richard was faced with a difficult decision. He could let his pride dictate his actions, potentially leading his business to ruin, or he could swallow his pride and seek help. It was a struggle, but Richard chose the latter. He sought the counsel of a financial advisor, someone who could give him a fresh perspective on his business and provide guidance on how to navigate the stormy waters. It was a humbling experience, but Richard was committed to saving his business. The decision to seek help proved to be a turning point for Richard. With the guidance of the financial advisor, he was able to make strategic changes, streamline operations, and bring his business back from the brink. It was a hard-fought victory, but a victory nonetheless. Richard's decision to seek help didn't make him weak or less capable. On the contrary, it showcased his strength and determination. He was willing to put his pride aside for the sake of his business, to learn from others, and to adapt. And that's the lesson we can take from Richard's story. Pride is a powerful emotion, but it should never stand in the way of seeking help. When faced with challenges, it takes strength to ask for assistance. It takes courage to admit that we don't have all the answers. Richard's story shows us the power and strength in seeking help when needed. So, what is the true cost of pride? Pride, in its most destructive form, can be a hefty price to pay. It's like an invisible barrier, often holding us back from asking for help when we need it the most. But what happens when we let our pride take the driver's seat? Let's start with missed opportunities. Imagine you're lost in a city you've never been to before. Because of pride, you refuse to ask anyone for directions. Instead, you wander around aimlessly, wasting time, energy, and probably missing out on some amazing sights. This is a simple example, but the principle applies to our lives in so many ways. Opportunities for growth, learning, and improvement often require us to seek help, advice, or guidance. When pride gets in the way, those opportunities can slip through our fingers. Next up, unnecessary struggles. When we're too proud to ask for help, we often end up going down a path of hardship that could have been avoided. It's like trying to canoe up a river without a paddle. You'll eventually get there, but it'll be a lot harder and take a lot longer than it needs to be. And let's not forget about failures. Sometimes, our pride can lead us to bite off more than we can chew, resulting in failures that could have been avoided had we sought assistance. It's like trying to lift a weight that's too heavy for us. We strain and struggle, but ultimately we fail. And that failure can leave us feeling defeated and demoralized. In conclusion, it's important to remember that pride is not always a bad thing. It can drive us to achieve and excel. But when it hinders us from seeking help, it can lead to missed opportunities, unnecessary struggles, and failures. The cost of pride can be significantly high, especially when it prevents us from reaching out to others for assistance. How can we embrace vulnerability and overcome our pride? This question might seem daunting, but the answer lies within us. It's about acknowledging the courage we possess to face our fears head-on. It's about realizing that our pride isn't a shield to hide behind, but a barrier that keeps us from growing and evolving. Let's start by acknowledging our limitations. Nobody is perfect. We all have areas in our life where we struggle. It could be anything from managing finances, dealing with emotional issues, or even something as simple as fixing a leaky faucet. When we admit to ourselves that we don't know everything, we open the door to learning, growth, and self-improvement. Next, let's talk about reaching out to others. It's important to remember that we're all in this together. We all face challenges, and sometimes the best way to overcome them is with the help of those around us. This could mean asking a friend for advice, seeking guidance from a mentor, or even just having a heart-to-heart with a loved one. By reaching out to others, we not only gain a fresh perspective on our problems, but also strengthen our relationships in the process. Finally, there's seeking professional help. This is often the hardest step to take because it involves admitting that we can't handle everything on our own. But remember, there's no shame in seeking help. Therapists, counselors, and other professionals are there to provide us with the tools and strategies we need to overcome our challenges. They offer a safe space to express our fears and concerns without judgment. In the end, embracing vulnerability isn't about showing weakness, it's about showing strength. It's about having the courage to face our fears, admit our limitations, and seek help when we need it. It's about breaking down the walls of pride and opening ourselves up to growth and improvement. Embracing vulnerability and seeking help when necessary is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to our strength and wisdom.